Lions Nation, what is going on? Welcome into the Lions Pulse. Jeez. I'm your host, Miko, running a little late, later than I normally do, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I had one of those days where I just felt like I had to go get a workout in after work. And not even because I had a bad day at work. It was just like feeling sluggish, feeling tired. And I'm just like, you know what? The only thing that I can think of that's gonna actually fix that is to go hit the gym really quick. So tried to do that, thought I had my timing down, well enough, but ended up running a little late. But I appreciate you guys checking in with me. Hope you guys are all having a great day. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Um, First and foremost, if you are new to the channel, uh, please do me the biggest favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you guys will know every time that I go live or when I upload a video. I tend to do both of those things here on this channel, both going live and trying to upload videos when I can. And if you have been around to this channel, you guys already know what to do. Hit the like button. All of those things greatly help out the channel as we continue to try and grow this thing. Speaking of growing the channel, hit a huge milestone today. We finally cracked 500 subscribers. So thank you to everybody that has taken the time to subscribe to the channel and be supportive and kind of just go on this journey with me as we look to build this into somewhat a place where Lions fans can kind of get together and again talk football, debate, go back and forth, and hopefully by the end of it, all be better for it and be a little more informed about the team that we all love. So again, super excited to be back with you guys. Last week we had a really great stream. Huge shout out to Ryan Matthews from Pride of Detroit to come by and really talking training camp, getting a good look ahead to training camp, which kicks off next week. And then this past Sunday, I got to join Dan Pask over on his channel, over on his Twitch channel. And again, continue to talk Lions, continue to talk training camp and things of that nature. So again, if you haven't seen the stream with me and Ryan, definitely go back after this stream, check that out. It was a really great conversation. He brought so much information and it was so cool just to have somebody to like chop it up with and deep dive into training camp, and definitely go out and support Dan. Somebody who's looking to, again, do the same thing that I'm doing, right? Looking to build a channel, looking to, generate a following, and he has such a good amount of knowledge and questions and insight. He's had some really good interviews over on his channel, so definitely go out and support him as well. But again, before we jump into the topics of today, I want to give a quick couple shout outs. Shout out to my guy Grit, showing love in the channel. Shout out Gino in the chat, and again, Grit, throwing out some congratulations. I appreciate it, Grit. Again, hitting that 500 mark was huge. Again, the channel is only like a couple months old. We just started this, back in May, like middle of May or something like that. So to be at 500, this quickly, I'm super excited about, super proud of. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys showing your support, especially my guy Luke G. I always got to give Luke a huge shout out because Luke has been super supportive from day one, vouching for me, again, promoting the channel and being super supportive. So I'm always very supportive and appreciative of the people that have kind of helped me grow this to what it is. So with all that said, you guys have seen the title. You guys kind of have a good idea of what the first topic we're going to get into today. Again, because I was running late, didn't get a chance to get, typically like I have the topic kind of pop up on the screen. Didn't have a chance to do that because again, busy day, didn't really get a chance to kind of get everything set up the way I normally do. But with that said, if you've seen the thumbnail, if you've seen the title of the stream, you guys already know what the topic of the day is. And that is, again, the Lions are going to be getting ready for the 2023 season. Training camp kicks off next week. Rookies report in on Wednesday, and then I think veterans report in on Saturday. And then like we're on the road to the regular season from that point on. And as I was like searching for topics to kind of, do today's stream with, I ran across an article on The Athletic where they were kind of going through all 32 teams in the NFL, and they were trying to determine who would be the MVP for each team, not taking into account quarterbacks. And so like I do with most articles, it's like, the full, every team in the NFL, I immediately scroll down to the Lions because I want to see like, hey, who does The Athletic actually think is, MVP, caliber for the Lions as far as being that dude that's going to be a huge reason why they win games. And in the Athletics article, they went with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And it's not a pick that I can like strongly disagree with, because obviously when we're talking about one of the most impactful players in the Lions. I think Saint is head and shoulders above some of the other guys. He's definitely Mr. Reliable when it comes down to, again, one of the offensive weapons that we have. Ever since he's, was drafted to the Lions, he's just been consistent year after year. So when, taking into account, and if we have to take away quarterback, because I think we would all necessarily agree that if the Lions end up having this amazing season, and they are able to accomplish everything that a lot of fans have kind of said that they would accomplish, winning the division, making it to the playoffs, and even potentially winning a playoff game, a lot of that credit, whether deserved or not, again, more than likely will be deserved, is going to go to Jared Goff because he's the starting quarterback and because quarterbacks tend to get the most amount of praise and most amount of recognition. Um, it's almost a full blown conclusion that if the Lions have a great season, most of that praise is going to go to Jared Goff, and more than likely, it's going to be justly deserved. But if we had to, again, not factor in Jared Goff, I really kind of sat back and was like, okay, who do I think would necessarily be the MVP of the team? And I came up with a pretty decent sized list of guys that I think could potentially be likely candidates for the Lions, and guys that I think would be a huge factor into why the Lions are probably having good seasons. And so I want to start on the defensive side of the football because I think that would be outside of Jared Goff having an amazing season, and having another consistent season like he did last year, where he put up really good numbers and was consistent from beginning to end. I do think there's something to be said for if this team is going to find success, if they're going to, again, knock off every accomplishment or every goal that they have on their list, it's going to have to require the defense to stand up in some form or fashion. And so the first person that came to mind when I thought of that is your former, number 2 overall pick in Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden's coming off again in a very impressive rookie year where, finishing with 9.5 sacks. We all know about the 3 interceptions, and again, consistently got better, along with this defense after their bye week, and started to kind of put his games together and string along similar production game after game. And if the Lions are expecting, again, to win the division, or if they're expecting to make a deep playoff run, they're going to need Aiden to really ratchet up his game to another level and become a double-digit sack kind of guy. And with the likes of how deep this edge group is for the Lions, and we've been talking about it the last couple streams, Aiden has an opportunity to not just, again, be able to rush the passer, and obviously he's going to be one of the main starters and be on the field all the time. He's also going to finally have enough guys behind him if everyone remains healthy to get breathers where he's not having to play a high percentage of the snaps, where you're able to keep him fresh and so he can be more effective in his pass rush. And not to mention, because I know if I start talking about this too long, my guy Mark LeBay is going to jump in the chat and bring this up, but also having James Houston opposite him consistently throughout the season and not just coming in the middle of the season will also make things easier for Aiden, because again, that's another pass rusher that single-handedly is going to require more attention from an opposing offensive line. So if Aiden can again take the next step forward and go from a guy that had 9.5 sacks and become a double-digit sack guy, again, possibly picking up 12 or more sacks, this defense starts to look a lot different, and this team is able to, again, probably win a few games that they probably shouldn't. I mean, again, going into a Kansas City matchup, right? Having Aiden be an actual threat off the edge and be able to put a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes and be able to disrupt the passing game and also be a force in the run game is going to be huge for the Lions to be able to accomplish and win that game, and just to be able to not even just win it, but again, to be able to showcase to the nation that yo, this team is for real. I think we're all very confident that the offense is going to be there in some capacity, is going to probably be similar or just as good as they were last year due to the upgrades that they've made at the running back position and having it ideally an entire healthy offensive line. But the defensive side, if you start getting guys, your best defensive players, to take that step forward, well, there's no reason to think that again, uh the Lions can again win the division, make it to the playoffs, win a playoff game, and I think Aiden Hutchinson would be a big reason for that. Before I go any further, shout out to my guy Luke in the chat saying it's all your hard work. Yo, Luke, again, it's been so fun to be able to do this, and like I said at the top, really appreciate your support. Shout out to my guy Brian saying great job, #1pride. Again, growing this channel has been a lot of fun, and I can't say enough about the support that you guys have given me. But again, so another person that I can kind of look at and see probably having an MVP type of impact on this team to be able to kind of get this team over the hump, in addition to Aiden on the defensive side, I'd also have to go with CJ Gardner-Johnson. CJ obviously is a newer addition to this team, but when looking at just overall impact that CJ could have, you can definitely get a sense that his impact is not going to just be limited to the field. CJ has from like his first opening press conference, and it's something that's really stood out to me from the time that we've gotten to know him, and the first time he was introduced to the fan base. CJ's had one consistent message, which is to be a leader and to show these young guys, what it takes to be great in the league. And the thing that I think more so than anything, like we talk about the defense maybe not having the proper talent, right? Maybe they don't have necessarily the pieces on the defensive line, or there could be questions about how much the secondary is shaken up. One of the things that I thought was always missing from this defense was the absence of a true leader, someone who wanted to be that alpha in the room. You had a lot of guys that were willing to be lead by example type of guys. But when this Lions defense has been good in the past, and when they have been able to, put together good seasons, it's because they've had guys that were willing to lead. Again, you go back to when Ndamukong Suh was here, best player and a leader. You look at when Glover Quinn was here, just bona fide leader. You had guys that could rally the room and get everybody on the same page and hold everybody to a certain standard. That is exactly what I think CJ is going to bring to this Lions roster in this upcoming season. He's going to be that guy that's going to hold everybody accountable because he knows what it takes. I mean, he's coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, so he absolutely understands the importance of being on the same page. He's worked with Aaron Glenn before, so he understands the importance of communication. Those are the types of things that your defense, again, you may have guys that you trust. The Lions clearly, Dan Campbell, AG, Kelvin Shepard, and them, they trust Alex Anzalone, for example. But that doesn't mean that Alex is the type of leader that you need to help take this defense to the next level. And that is what I think you can absolutely get in CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's going to be vocal, but not just also vocal, but he's going to back it up on the field. He's going to be not just a lead by example guy, but he's also going to get into guys' face. He's going to get in the guy's face, and he's going to let them know what is expected of them, come game time. Shout out to my guy Wes in the chat saying, love what I've seen so far. Miko, keep it going, bro. Yo, man, I appreciate the support. And yeah, man, there's so many good things that are that actually we have some other things. I have some other things lined up for the channel. Can't wait to be able to kind of share this news and stuff like that with you guys, but I can't do it just yet. The minute I can share it with you guys, I'm absolutely going to share it because again, the last couple months have been crazy, and I have even more great things kind of planned for you guys and for the channel as well. Brian in the chat saying Hutch and Houston on D, Monty and Jameson on offense. If these four level up their playing ability, that would be a good start. CJ, GJ will help transform our secondary. Gibbs will be adding that lightning. So speaking of Gibbs, right? If we were to go from the defensive side to the offensive side, if you caught my stream last week with Ryan, we talked a good amount about Jahmyr Gibbs, and Ryan and I were kind of on the same page where Jahmyr Gibbs has that same type of potential. Again, if we're talking about players on the Lions that have that potential to be an MVP type of impact on the team, Jahmyr Gibbs for me is absolutely that. And I get it. He's a rookie, and it's like, well, how can you put so much expectation on a rookie? It's not necessarily his experience. It's about what he can do and the impact he can have on the game. One of the things that, as good as the Lions offense was, you could tell that they were still they were still kind of missing something from the running back position. As again, as steady and as like reliable as Jamal was, week in, week out, DeAndre wasn't there week in, week out. And that was an element of the run game that was just missing. It was an element of the pass game that was just missing. And if you're able to get a Jahmyr Gibbs type player who has the vision, who has the quickness, who has the speed, and has the versatility to really play all across your offense, as far as playing receiver, being able to play running back, that is going to just elevate the possibilities of what this offense can do. It's going to allow Jared Goff to have a reliable safety valve and someone that he can count on so that in the event that he needs to do a check down, he has a guy that can not just get a couple yards, but actually, take these short passes and get big chunk plays out of them. Jahmyr Gibbs to me is that type of guy where I feel like he's going to have a type of season where he's going to be in the offensive rookie of the year type of conversation. We've seen, I was looking at some of the running back numbers last year, and you had a couple guys, get over 1,000 yards rushing and not necessarily have the same impact in the passing game, but that's something that I think Jahmyr Gibbs could absolutely do. Will he necessarily have 1,000 rushing yards? Maybe not quite. He might get somewhere. I think he'll get somewhere around like the 800 range, just because him and Monty are going to be splitting carries. But if you're able to get 800 rushing yards out of him and then get potentially another 400 to 600 receiving yards out of him, that's huge for your offense. It allows Amon-Ra St. Brown to not have to just be, Mr. Do everything across the middle. It allows for other parts of your offense to really thrive. And speaking of other elements of your offense that could really, well, before I jump into that, I want to jump back in the chat because I'll start rambling on. Haters House 710 saying Anzalone MVP. Again, Alex is going to be asked to do a lot. I don't know if I would have him in the MVP conversation because I do think Jack Campbell is just going to, I think Jack is going to drastically outperform like the other linebackers, on that defense. I was listening a little bit as well as at the gym to Pride of Detroit as they were talking, and Jeremy was kind of like highlighting the fact that, during Brad Holmes' interview with Peter Schrager, how glowingly they were speaking about Jack Campbell and how, Jack wasn't necessarily a player that they didn't go into the drafts thinking they needed a linebacker, but Jack just seemed that much better. And he seemed like that, like so much of an upgrade at the position that they felt like they had to take him. And it kind of go back, and I'm going to start to echo something that Luke said a couple weeks ago, where it's like, well, if he's that good, he's not having to earn a job. He's already earned it. It's just a matter of getting him comfortable and getting him up to speed with the guys that he's going to be playing next to. Jack is going to play. If you felt the need to take a linebacker when you didn't necessarily need one, I don't see how that guy just doesn't play. So Anzalone, I think, is obviously still going to have that leadership, responsibility. He's someone that I wouldn't be surprised is still voted a captain just because of how much the guys on the defense respect him. But I do think there's other guys on the defense that will probably have a bigger impact, come the time the season starts. Grit saying depth will be the real MVP. Listen, you could say depth, you could say just health in general, right? Like the Lions just being healthy could be an MVP of the season. Hell, if we could say, I think in order for this team to really get to where we're talking about they need to get to, Aaron Glenn could be an MVP just from the simple fact of being able to get this defense on the right page and being able to help these guys elevate and play at a higher caliber of football. Again, going from being one of the worst defenses to even just being one of the middle of the pack defenses would be a huge accomplishment for Aaron Glenn and the Lions. Jordy here saying Hutch, Houston, Aleem, Kirby, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Sewell. Too hard to pick. And I think that's the hard part is there is more talent on this roster than I think, obviously, like we've seen the last couple seasons. And so when trying to pick an MVP or who could have that type of impact, there's more options. And that's a great thing. And it makes it seem more tangible for the Lions to be able to accomplish the goals that they have in front of them. Jordy also saying would be awesome for it to be Levi. Hope he can play. Listen, Jordy, I'm right there with you. I really do. I would love for Levi to be able to be like to return to a healthy status. And for nothing else, like it has nothing to do with proving Brad Holmes right or anything like that. I'm always kind of bummed out when guys don't really get to live out their dream. Levi had this, obviously, like as a football player, has had this dream of playing in the NFL for years. And to not be able to get that opportunity simply because your body won't allow you to is like, I feel bad, right? It's a story that impacts a number of people in the NFL. Levi is not like a special case by any means, but if Levi could become healthy, if Levi could get to a healthy status and compete in training camp and potentially, lock up a roster spot, again, I would be rooting for him, the whole way, because I just think it would be a good story and it'd be great to be able to see him just kind of just get over that hump and kind of put that injury behind him. Brian saying Gibbs has Javid best speed and Swift's juke ability. Monty is also a pass catching running back, something Jamal wasn't. This will open our wide receiver core up and get separation. Ben's offense will be explosive. Listen, and I think so, right? That's I know it's just on paper, and I think some people are trying to like pull back on that because it's like, I believe it was another athletic article where one of the GMs was saying that, he doesn't necessarily feel great about the whole, switch from Swift to Gibbs. And I understand it. Like, I was of the mindset that even though they drafted Jameer Gibbs, I still would have kept DeAndre Swift just for the simple fact that if those were your three running backs, if your three running backs were Monty, Swift, and Gibbs, I would have much preferred that to Monty, Gibbs, and Reynolds. And I love Reynolds, but I just think like that would have been a more dynamic running back room. But obviously, like the Lions wanted to do right by DeAndre Swift, knowing that they probably wouldn't utilize him as much, and knowing that Jameer Gibbs was going to basically take every opportunity that they originally had game planned for him. So no harm, no foul in trading away DeAndre Swift, but I do think Jameer Gibbs is going to be an upgrade simply off the fact that he'll be available, simply off the fact that, the Lions may be able to, again, he's younger, he's fresher, he hasn't had, too many bumps and bruises and things like that to his body. So you can manage him a little bit better than you could DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift had already racked up injuries, in his first couple years in the NFL, and they just kept on piling up. So I think at least you kind of like get this fresh start with Jameer Gibbs. And while getting this fresh start, you also get an upgrade in a couple of areas. Again, with the speed, with the ability to just be a more dynamic pass catcher, which is kind of even crazy to think about at times because I thought DeAndre Swift was a very effective pass catcher. So to think that you're getting an even bigger upgrade at that position with Jameer Gibbs is kind of crazy to think, and it's mostly going to come in the form of him lining up a receiver and lining up in the slot and making the job easier for the wide receivers around him because not only can like Jameer Gibbs work the middle of the field, but again, take those passes that maybe 5 to 6 yard gains and then immediately make those 25 to 30 yard gains with his speed, vision, and quickness alone. Um, Wes saying Barnes is going to be the surprise, in my opinion. Went back and watched our matchup with Green Bay week 8, and Malcolm gets his elbow injury early, and Barnes was forced in, and he had a great effing game. Listen, Derek Barnes, like we talked about this a few weeks ago, right? If there is a reason why Jack Campbell doesn't start, for me, it's always been that like, well, if Derek Barnes has made that jump that people are talking about, the way that Kelvin Shepard is talking about, the way Dan Campbell is talking about it, if he's really made that jump, well, then yeah, it probably will make it more difficult on Jack because the Lions clearly have so much faith in Alex. And so not only does Jack have to just play well, he's also going to have to like steal a certain level of trust from this coaching staff for them to choose him over Alex. And if Derek Barnes is playing well, that's only going to make it more difficult because whether they want Alex starting in some form or fashion, I don't think this staff, and Brad Holmes giving him a new contract is going to be looking at Alex like, oh no, we just want him on the bench and we'll play him a couple snaps. They're expecting Alex to start. And I'm sure Alex is expecting to start. And if that doesn't happen, again, if I just don't see it happening, put it that way. I don't see a scenario where Alex Anzalone isn't starting. But if he isn't, or I'm sorry, if Jack Campbell isn't, I think it's very much possibly because Derek Barnes has really kind of stolen the show and leapfrogged both Jack Campbell and Malcolm Rodriguez going into this season. All right, so getting back to my list of other possible MVPs. Actually, let's talk about Jack Campbell because Jack is actually on my list. And again, it's another rookie, and it may sound crazy because again, like it's probably not the most ideal thing if you're putting so much hope in young players who don't have NFL experience. But again, like I said a few minutes ago, I expect Jack to start. I expect Jack to be your week one Mike linebacker. And with the skill set that Jack Campbell has, and with what Kelvin Shepard has talked about asking Jack Campbell to do more than what he was maybe asked to do in Iowa, I think Jack Campbell absolutely has the physical tools to do that. And I think he has the skill set that fits what the Lions actually want him to do. When I was on the Dan Pask's live stream over on Twitch, he kind of asked the same question of like, "Yo, what do you expect? What do I actually think? The Lions want their linebackers to do?" And you look at what Jack Campbell's skill set is, and I think that's how they want their linebackers to play. They want their linebackers to play downhill when it's obviously running down situations, and they want them to be able to attack the line of scrimmage. But at the same time, they still expect their linebackers to utilize athleticism to be effective in the passing game. Well, Jack does that better than any of the other linebackers that they have currently on this roster. And that is why I think if he's able to again pick up the defense early, learn it through training camp, build that chemistry and understand where he's supposed to be and how to play at an NFL level, he's another key factor into why this defense could be really good. Because again, where this defense is still kind of weak, or at least we're questioning whether or not they'll be vastly improved, is up the middle. And so that's defensive tackles and that's linebackers. And if Jack Campbell is able to play at a very high level, that can definitely alleviate some of that pressure and that vulnerability that they have of being attacked up the middle on rushing plays, and as well as having a linebacker that can actually cover across the middle of the field and be able to run with tight ends or at least stay in phase with running backs. Um, so for me, that's another reason why Jack is kind of high on my list for a possible MVP candidate and could be a really key factor into why the Lions have a better season, um, or have a good season and have the good season that we all expect them to have. Um, and Joshua, you kind of seems to be in the same agreement, right? Jack for the long term. Um, Wes also saying, right? I often love Jack Campbell. And that's the thing, right? Jack is someone that I think initially, like most of us did on draft day, because we had different ideas and different plans on what we thought the Lions were going to do. Jack just kind of fits what this Lions defense needs and what they were kind of always and kind of missing, in my opinion. So yeah, I think another player that kind of gives this team something that they've been missing, and they're going to be missing it for a few games. But again, when he comes back, could have a very MVP type of impact, is Jamison Williams. And I know people are like, well, how can a dude that misses 6-7 weeks turn around and have an MVP type of impact? And it's because of what JMO does for an offense. With JMO being out, like their only true deep threat is probably going to be Khalif Raymond. And again, I don't know how much they're going to use Leaf because he's also still their punt returner, and he's probably going to be involved in kickoff return as well this upcoming year. So you're not going to probably be able to utilize him the same way. Now, you can definitely roll out Marvin Jones for some of those deep routes. You can definitely roll out Antoine Green. If he makes the roster, he can definitely be a deep threat for you as well. But both of those guys don't compare to how Jamison takes off the top of a defense. Jamison does it with a different level of ease and a different quickness to it. And while he's going to be, he's going to have his time to work in training camp to get on the same page as Jared Goff, that I think by the time he returns in week 7, it's going to be automatic. And it's immediately going to take an offense that's already really good on paper, right? Remember, the Lions had a top 3 offense before Jamison played last year, and he just added an extra element. Well, now you're talking about a dude coming back, and he's not coming off of an injury. He's just coming off of a suspension. So he's going to have fresh legs. He's going to be hungry. And that is a combination that I think is really going to help take this offense to another level. And one thing so I sometimes get like criticized for not giving Jared Goff enough credit. And I'm going to take a moment to actually point out something about Jared Goff that I think is very, that doesn't get talked about enough, maybe, and definitely not by me. I definitely don't tend to bring this up. But when Jared Goff was playing his best football with the Rams, it was when he had that tandem of a really, dynamic running back in Todd Gurley, and a deep threat that he could like just air it out to every so often when again so many teams are like we're worried about Todd Gurley hurting them. It just left so many open opportunities for them to take deep shots. Well, the Lions now have that. They now have that in Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams, two guys that can literally transform their offense just by stepping on the field. That tandem can immediately take an offense like, oh, they just like to work it across the middle. They like to work short yardage. Well, now you put two guys on the field that can take it to the house, plus one of the best wide receivers at working across the middle. You are going to cause so many headaches for opposing defenses, and that's only going to allow Jared Goff to thrive even more. And so, again, it's something that I don't talk about often, but it is a key factor into what is going to make this offense successful is the fact that Jared Goff is going to get the types of players that are going to make his job even easier, on top of the fact of having an offensive coordinator that is great at deception, that is great at, you know, game planning and getting his players into like the best possible position to perform at a high level. So let me scroll up here for a second in the chat and see what else you guys are saying. um Shout out to my guy Det Fanman saying Hutch, Jack, Branch seem like a trio to build a defense from. Listen, those three guys, right? You throw in Kirby as well, like that's a defense that's a defensive like a young defensive core that I don't think this team has had in a really long time. I think you would prefer like I think you would love to have another defensive tackle in there. As good as Aleem is, I don't know if Aleem is like the same level of caliber as some of these other D tackles, right? I think they could. It's what's weird? I feel like Aleem is very similar, and I hopefully like I don't know, this might get me killed, but I think Aleem is in a similar vein as Jared Goff, right? Where they're very good at what they do, but you know that they're still like not probably in the upper echelon of their position, right? They could definitely in the future, it's not a need, it's not that something that they have to drastically go out and do, but they could get a better, more attacking mindset type of defensive tackle to pair up with Aleem, and I think it would help Aleem thrive in the same way that Jared Goff tends to thrive a little bit better when he has these explosive players next to him. I think Aleem would do something similar on your defense, where if you had, I think, which is why people were asking and kind of calling for the Lions to trade for a Quentin Williams or to trade for an Ed Oliver or trade for Justin Simmons before these guys got new contracts. It's because you knew like, hey, those are dudes, and if you put those dudes next to some of these other like good players, it's only going to elevate the play of everyone around them. And so, but this core of again Hutch, Jack at the middle, and then you having Brian Branch be like this versatile safety, it's a young core that I'm really really excited about. Brian over here talking about again another guy on defense that I'm really really excited for and have high hopes for. Saying I'm hoping Josh Pascal has a breakout season. He was a beast in college and he has shown flashes at times before his injury. Listen, I've been saying it the last few weeks, the last few streams. Josh Pascal is the guy that I expect to win Edge 2. He's the guy that I expect to take that big leap because of everything that Brian just pointed out. He was a beast in college, and not just against the pass, but against the run as well. And so, again, he's going to have to go like beat out these veteran players, going to have to beat out Romeo, going to have to beat out Charles Harris. And yeah, hope, he's going to have to hope that James Houston doesn't take this big leap as far as, run defense. But if Josh is also able to elevate his game, there's no reason for me to think that Josh couldn't potentially have that edge 2 spot and be a really like him and Hutch could be a great tandem. I know we've talked about them maybe adding another edge, whether that's via trade or free agency or something like that. But if Josh can just take that step and just become a little more consistent, best thing that the Lions could possibly have. Wes saying, I think Barnes takes a DeAndre Levy type like leap. If any of y'all remember Levy's career well, first 2 seasons was crap, then boom, year 3 was electric. And DeAndre, see, and that's the thing, right? And that's just something that this team is missing that linebacker. That DeAndre Levy was a linebacker that could do it all, right? He was a tackling machine, but he also was great in coverage, was able to, create turnovers and just be, all over the place on that second level for their defense. Um, Wes also saying JMO is special. Yo, like I said, I agree. And haters hatters hat 710 saying, can Gibbs be used deep? Absolutely, right? I mean, again, you can look and I fully expect to see Jameer Gibbs running wheel routes. I expect him to probably run deep slant routes. He has that level of just, again, especially if you put him on the same side as Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of those guys is probably going deep because you're not going to run them both in on similar type of short routes. But Amon-Ra has been like kind of vocal this offseason about wanting, or at least, yeah, heading into the offseason about wanting to run more deep routes. Well, putting Jameer Gibbs on the field with him gives one of them the opportunity to be able to run more deep routes and be, more impactful in the passing game that way. Brian saying, don't forget Marvin Jones. He's older, but still has hands. If he gets open, you can almost guarantee he's coming down with the ball. So the biggest thing with Marvin Jones for me is that he's going to have to build that chemistry with Jared Goff. Like, that was really easy for him to do, in my opinion, with Matthew Stafford, because Matthew was just like, he had already had that gunslinger mentality where he's like, I'm going to toss it up and I'm going to trust that you're going to get it. Like, it was built into just how he played the game. Certain quarterbacks are kind of just built that way. Aaron Rodgers is built that way. Patrick Mahomes, like those types of gunslinger quarterbacks kind of just like have that innate trait already built into their fiber of their being. Jared Goff, not quite like that, right? He has to learn and develop that type of chemistry before he starts trusting guys and just starts airing it out for them in jump ball types of situations. But if they can, again, iron that out in camp where he can just build that trust and trust like yo, air it out to Marvin. He's done it his entire career, and just trust that he'll make the play. And if he doesn't make the play, he's at least going to make the tackle. So it's like it's like a punt in that situation. Steve-O in the chat saying Aleem might be a different player this season. And I'm hoping so, right? Like, what I said about Aleem isn't meant to be a knock on Aleem. I think Aleem obviously went into this offseason, looking to transform his body, looking to be more impactful, looking to be a more, attacking style defensive tackle, because he knows that's what this team needs. But again, it's still like one of those wait and see things. Like, I'm hopeful that he makes that jump. I'm hopeful that the Aleem that we saw against the New York Giants is the Aleem that we'll see from week 1 all the way to week 18, because that's what we're going to need for this defense again to take that leap forward. Josh was saying best Lions roster I've seen, no cap. I think someone else said this on either on another stream I was watching, or maybe it was on this channel as well, said something similar. And I think the only other roster that I think you can kind of compare it with is, I want to say it was the 2011 roster. The season where they went like 11-5, they had like third ranked defense. And the only thing that team was missing was like a really solid run game. Now, I think this team is more complete. I think top to bottom, going back to what Grit said earlier about, the MVP being depth, this team is deeper probably than that team was. But again, if you can get a defense that's that good, and that's, a top 10, top 5 type of defense as to go along with a top 5, top 10 type of offense, I mean, we'll be talking about the Lions going to a Super Bowl and being like a heavy favorite to go to the Super Bowl. My guy Luke in the chat saying, do you feel the Lions missed the opportunity when they passed on Carter and Kancey? Do I feel like they passed? Yeah, a little bit, right? Because I still think if we're talking about need, right, and if we're talking about what the Lions needed at the time and what they still need now, Carter and Kancey would have filled that need better. Right, Carter being the do-it-all defensive tackle that's great against the run and great against the pass, and Kancey was being someone that just would have been probably a better pass rushing defensive tackle. Again, still personally, I would have drafted those guys ahead of Jack Campbell. Even though I love Jack Campbell, I would have taken those guys above Jack. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't diminish what I thought about Jack. I think Jack is great for what this defense needs at the linebacker position, and if the Lions felt and were very confident in the fact that, like, yo, Jack Campbell wasn't going to be there in the second round, I'm not going to argue about it. But at the same time, if the defensive tackle spot is a weakness all year, all season long, it's something that Brad Holmes is going to have to really reevaluate, because there's nothing wrong with taking the players that you feel the most confident about, especially when like this is the guy that scouted Aaron Donald and went against the grain when a lot of people probably wouldn't have taken Aaron Donald because of size and metrics and things like that, and went instead with his gut and went and picked the guy that truly loved football. But again, that's only that philosophy only works if the decision to ignore needs doesn't burn you. And so if the Lions get burnt up the middle all season long, yeah, there's going to be people that are going to probably come back and be like, "Yo, did did Brad Holmes make the right decision to pass on Carter and Cansey, especially if Carter and Cansey go on to have better seasons um, than your defensive tackles, or if they go on to have better seasons than Jack Campbell?" Um, and Luke saying, I mean, getting that tag partner for McNeil. Yeah, I think again, Carter and Cansey would have been, I think, great partners for McNeil. I think if you picked up Cansey, I don't think Aleem would have had to make that transition to being an attack of style defensive tackle, unless that's what he wants. But like, it wouldn't have been like a requirement for him. And in Carter would have just literally allowed just for so much versatility along that across that defensive line. Um, but like I said during the draft process, if the Lions were out off of character concerns from jump, I'm not here to like argue that, because again, if he ends up being a character concern, like the red flags were there, and we would all be looking at Brad Holmes like, why would you take a dude that had obvious red flags? So you know, that's just kind of the way I look at it right now. Um, that fan kind of quoting me, Aleem equals golf now ranks high on my Lions, on my favorite Lions comment. Well played, sir. Sits next to Risden's defense will be better than offense, and Doses Martin will block kicks this year. I don't know if you're trolling me, but like it's I don't know. Like I said, it's I don't mean like again as far as I mean like the type of caliber of player they are. I just think that Aleem, he's not like I don't think any of us would argue that Aleem's not a top 10, defensive tackle. I don't think any of us would argue that. Well, some people would argue that Garrett Goff is a top 10 quarterback. He's not for me. He's top 15. And like I said last week, or actually I said this on Dan's stream. He's a top 15 quarterback, and he's not 15 or 14 for me. So the same thing is kind of true for Aleem. Like, I think Aleem is a very good defensive tackle. The thing that he lacks and the thing that he has yet to do in his career, be consistent. Be the Aleem McNeil. Like, if he's the Aleem McNeil that we saw in the Giants game, we would be talking about Aleem very differently than we did, those early seasons or earlier in the season, my bad. Um, Let me see. Anything else that I might be missing? Yo, shout out to my guy Big T in the building saying, "What up, Domiko and Luke G? What's good with you, Big T?" Um, Brian saying, "Did anyone think back in 2020 we'd be talking about an MVP back then? It would have been Josh Reynolds for wide receiver and Harris for the D. Crazy what happens in a few years." And I think that's just again, it is a testament to Brad Holmes of how quickly he's been able to reshuffle the deck and be able to find talented quality players both in the draft and in free agency. And also a testament to this coaching staff to be able to develop the talent that they've been given. Um, so going back to what essentially what got us down this rabbit hole in the first place, like those were a couple of my MVP candidates. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, Aiden Hutchinson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Jack Campbell, and I guess an honorable mention would be James Houston. And again, with James Houston, it really just comes down to, and it's been the thing that I continue to harp on with James, it really just comes down to snap count. It really just comes down to how frequently he's going to be on the field. If he somehow gets pegged into that third down only type of role, not saying that he couldn't be an MVP for this team, but I just think it becomes a little more difficult. If he's someone, though, that is consistently getting, 30 to 40 snaps a game type of production, yeah, I think James could absolutely be an MVP for this team because, like I've said in the past, he's your best pass rusher. He's your most natural pass rusher by far. And he will have an impact on this defense, and he'll make, again, getting off the field on third down so much easier for this defense going forward. Def Fan saying, I still can't believe they had Martin at 330 pounds playing D end in the fourth and the final drive of a game, then had him chasing QBs to the boundary of the same drive. He is still running Martin hype. Listen, and Broderick Martin is somebody that I really like. Broderick Martin is someone that I am really high on, where it's just a matter of getting him experience, throwing him into the fire, and letting him get accustomed to the NFL game. Because if he does that, he might take his lumps. He's absolutely going to take his lumps, but I think he'll be better for it in the long run. He'll be that type of player that could really, really, transform this defense and make them better in run defense, which is again a key weakness to this defense last year, was their inability to not stop and contain the run. Part of that was due to personnel. Another part of that was just, again, like Isaiah Buggs just playing too many snaps. And you kind of can't expect a dude of that size and that caliber to play that many snaps and not think that he's going to give up, he's going to get moved out of the way on some of these runs. And when your defensive tackles are exhausted and your linebackers aren't, up to snuff, yeah, guys start getting moved out the way. And that's how you end up with what happened in the Carolina game. It's kind of, cut and dry like that for me. Det saying no troll at all. Aleem equals golf as a video title might be successful through clickbaitiness. I truly dig the opinion as they are ironically similar. It almost sounds like a topic Valeni would push. Listen, and like I said, I don't mean that to be a slight to either one. I think it's just my evaluation of like where they rank in comparison to the NFL. They are great for you, right? Aleem is great for the Lions. The Lions, these are the defensive tackles they have, right? They have Buggs, they have Aleem, they have Broderick Martin, Christian Covington, and we'll see what happens with Levi. Those are of that crop. Aleem is by far the best. And the same is true with Goff. When you start comparing like what you have on the roster, what's in the NFC North, Jared Goff is clearly the most accomplished, right, quarterback in the NFC North, and he's coming off the best season. I still contend that Justin Fields, talent-wise, has, the scariest talent, but it's still something that, again, when people push back on any type of Jared Goff take I do have to take a step back and realize, like, yeah, with the situation he's in, with the weapons he has, with the offensive coordinator he has, Jared Goff is more than good enough to help you win the division, help you get to the playoffs, and help you win a playoff game. Like it's yes, it is that simple in my opinion. Shout out to my Twitch audience. I don't typically get a ton of comments from Twitch, but Genomical45 saying really enjoyed your chat with Dan. Cheers from a new follower. Appreciate that, man. For those of you who would like to move over to Twitch at any point, definitely feel free to head over to Twitch, give me a follow. Because of my current setup, I'm not able to operate on Twitch the way I want to, but I still stream on both just in case, you prefer to watch over there instead of on YouTube. You can always drop me a follow over on Twitch as well. So shout out to you for that. Again, Luke saying, Martin has to show me I am not sold on his greatness. He will have to make me see it. I don't think it's greatness, though. I think it's potential. It's not greatness. I don't want to sit here and say that Broderick Martin, and if I did say that, that's a slip of the tongue for me, right? I don't mean to say that Broderick because he hasn't done anything, to Luke's point, hasn't done anything yet in the NFL to classify himself as great. But I do think his potential and his size and what he could be is very high. I think as a third round pick, I think I've said this in the past, I think he has that type of potential of what we thought what we saw in Kirby Joseph, a guy coming out of Illinois, a school that isn't really known for having a great football program, but Kirby being one of those bright spots. And Kirby took his lumps early once he filled in for Tracy, and slowly but surely by the end of the season, again, was somebody that we all feel very confident about, somebody that I'm over on Twitter getting upset about because they didn't give him a high enough Madden rating. Like, that's the type of path that I could see Broderick Martin take. If he's thrown in the fire, allow him to learn on the fly in those situations. Joshua with a question. Miko, you think Holmes and Campbell been working out together? I think they got a bromance going on. Listen, I think it was, what was it, a couple months ago when Brad Holmes showed up to that press conference looking a little jacked. Listen, I think at some point, this is what I think honestly happened. I think Dan Campbell probably gave him like one of those pats on the back a little too hard, and Brad probably sat there and looked at himself and was like, listen, if he gonna keep like, hugging me, slapping me around and things like that. Like I got to put on some mask. You can't just keep taking that type of abuse from your head coach and not doing anything about it. Um, Shout out to my guy Super Saiyan Lion in the chat. Um, Again, we'll disagree. We'll agree to disagree on this one. I think obviously, yes, his first 2 years, he hasn't really proven anything. But I talked about this again with Dan over on his stream when in talking about if we're talking about the team in the NFC North that could make that jump, that could really contend or be a challenge for the Lions this upcoming season, it's the Bears for me because I think Justin Fields has the talent and now they've surrounded him with better weapons. Um, I got to give the credit where credit is due. Brett Whitfield, who was another sports analyst, kind of pointed out that when looking at quarterbacks when they've typically gotten better in the NFL, so guys who maybe have struggled with accuracy and then they all of a sudden they get better in the next season or next couple seasons, it's usually when they are surrounded by better quality of talent. And you look at like that's what happened with Josh Allen. It's what happened with Jalen Hurts. Um, he had a couple other examples, and so Justin Fields at least finds himself in that situation, right? He was a quarterback last year that had Darnell Mooney was like his best wide receiver. Chase Claypool clearly is he's wide receiver 3 type of material. That I'll just put it plain like that. Like that's what Chase Claypool is to me at this point in his career. He's a good wide receiver 3. You get DJ Moore, who is a certified wide receiver 1. I just think it'll make Justin Fields' job a little bit easier. And they've obviously went ahead and upgraded the O-line. So again, not trying to, pump up the Bears too much, but I think like they've done a good enough job of surrounding him with talent to where his job should be easier this upcoming season. And I'll agree with you, right, on this statement. Like, I don't mean to make Justin Fields to be out Lamar Jackson. He is a lesser version of Lamar. Absolutely, right? He's great with his legs, but he's going to have to prove that he can do it with his arm as well. This upcoming season. Huggy Bear saying, in my opinion, potential means you're not good, but could be. That's Fields to me. And that's so many players in the NFL, right? Like, especially young players. You're basically any type of hype, any type of excitement is based off of potential first until we actually see it. Jahmyr Gibbs, for all the praise that I have for Jahmyr Gibbs, is potential until we see it on Sundays, And so again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's something that again, like I try to keep in mind when looking at the division is as high as I am on this team being able to accomplish so many different things. They still got to beat the teams in their division, and there's some of them specifically looking at the Bears that I think could make things a little challenging for them. Genomical saying you on the path to getting credentials seems like a bit easier to on board with a camera than a pen for your information. Listen, I would love to get some credentials. Like if the Lions ever want to give me credentials so that I can show up and ask questions at media day, sign me up. Right. Like I love my day job, but to be able to do this as a career would be a dream come true. So if you guys want to put in like a petition for me to get some credentials, I'm all for it. Missed this one by Matthew. Matthew saying, are you telling me that you believe that over half the quarterbacks in the NFL are better than Goff? Miko, dude, I have completely I have to completely respectfully disagree. No, I'm not saying that over half. I'm saying that like Jared Goff is in the upper half, right? So there's 32 quarterbacks, 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Jared Goff is in the upper half. I think he's somewhere 12, 13 for me personally. And again, that's based off of how I evaluate quarterbacks and how I personally like evaluate talent and play style and things that I value probably more so than somebody else, right? Someone else probably values the skill set that Jared Goff has a little bit more than me, right? You guys let me have it in the comment section a couple weeks ago. As far as like my opinions about Jared Goff versus Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford to me is a quarterback that I would prefer to have over a Jared Goff. Doesn't mean that Jared Goff is terrible. It's a personal preference type of thing. Luke saying, Miko, you can apply for those credentials. I think I'm gonna have to listen. I would love to get it. Right now, like I said earlier in the show, I have a couple things lined up for the channel. I have a couple other things that are a little more important at the moment, but trust me, if it's God's will, I'll get there. Right? Let's put it that way. If it's in the cards for me, I think I'll get there. Um, Matthew saying, "What's up with that grizzly beard?" Yo, so again, I said at the top of the show, I went to the gym before I streamed. That's why I was a little late. So normally when I come on here, I shower, I clean up my beard, I comb it out. This is not combed out. So this is what it looks like when it's not combed out. Um, so trust me, after I get off the stream with you guys, I gotta get cleaned up and make myself a little more presentable. I don't try to look presentable when I go to the gym because I'm married and I don't want that kind of attention, you know. I don't need my wife coming up to the gym, beating up people. Um, Yo, this has been fun though. I appreciate all the questions. You guys have had some great feedback and made this stream a little bit better. Like I said, I started the stream, I was a little discombobulated, just because, like I said, my entire schedule was kind of out of whack. Uh, but this has been fun. I'm really enjoying this. Brian asking the question: Do you think James Mitchell will have a breakout season? It depends on what you mean by breakout, right? Like what? Because I think that's a term. Like there's certain terms in sports that get thrown around a lot. What, Brian? Let me know what you mean specifically by breakout, because I think James Mitchell, now that he's healthy, will get more opportunities, and I think we got to see in a small dose like what James Mitchell can do for this offense when given opportunities. Breakout, I'm not saying give me like a yardage number, but just like what in your mind constitute as a breakout season? Because I think, um, you know, even if James Mitchell gets like 3 touchdowns, 200, 300 yards, I guess we can count that as a breakout season, right? A guy that was a 6th round pick last year, putting up those types of numbers, yeah, that's a breakout season in my opinion. Uh, but yeah, I guess it really just kind of depends on again your definition of breakout in that respect. Joshua was saying traditional style QBs are overlooked. Tom Brady equals traditional. Yeah, and again, I'm not opposed to traditional style quarterbacks. Like I said, Matthew Stafford is a traditional style of quarterback, and he's one of my favorites, and not just because he was a Lion, but it's a style of play that I've liked since I was a kid, right? Like that gunslinger type of mentality. I grew up loving, Rich Gannon, Brett Favre, even though he was a Packer. But like those style of quarterbacks, yeah, they were always kind of appealing to me. It's high risk, high reward with those types of quarterbacks, but it was exciting to me, and it was the style of quarterbacking that I love to see. Um, I know like what's in style now, right, is the mobile quarterback. Everybody wants a mobile quarterback, but I think that's the thing. Like if you guys have heard me talk about Hendon Hooker, and Luke will tell you the same about Hendon, right? Like Hendon's mobile, right? He can run, but the thing that like gets most people excited about Hendon is his arm talent, is his ability to kind of have that gunslinger type of mentality. So again, I'm not at the point where I'm rushing him to start. I want him to be fully healthy. I want him to be fully acclimated to the NFL game. Um, but Hendon Hooker is somebody I'm excited for. If the Lions ever decide to move on from Jared Goff in the next couple of years, I would feel very confident about this team in the hands of Hendon Hooker going forward. Dude is special from a like just thinking like looking at quarterback talent wise, kid is special. Um, Goff and Brady are talented in similar ways. I value their skills and fundamentals more than athleticism. And again, this is the thing with me, right? Because I think there are some people that value athleticism more than just playing the position well. It's all about how do you use your athleticism? Are you reckless with it? Are you like the way Justin Fields played last year is great. Like you look at that athleticism, and it's like, wow, he's really athletic. He can play the quarterback at a high, like he can play that mobile quarterback position at a high level. But if he's not winning games and if he's not really showing himself to be a threat as a passer, yeah, I would take a Jared Goff over that, because at least Jared Goff is winning games. You look at how Jalen Hurts plays the position, or you look at like how Lamar Jackson has played the position in his time in the NFL. They've at least won playing that style. So that's where athleticism, in my opinion, like can win over like a traditional style of quarterback. It's only if it leads to wins though. if you're athletic, but it's putting you in situations to consistently be injured, if it's putting you in situations where you haven't developed your passing skills and all you have is your ability to run, it's kind of moot in that point. Um, so again, not necessarily like a preference one or the other. It really does come down to like how do you play the position? And the thing that I've been learning, again, probably the hard way, right? Through some of you guys beating me up in the comment section, is to appreciate Jared Goff's style of play. It's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not what I grew up loving, but if they are winning, that's all that matters. That's all that matters at the end of the day, right? So, Brian saying we are loaded at tight end. Laporte is our one, but could he take over Brock 2 at number 2? Okay, so if you're talking about that as a again, as a possibility as a breakout, yeah, I think the thing is weird about this coaching staff is that they have preferences, right? They have preferences in how they like certain players to play. So if James Mitchell wants to overtake Brock Wright, he better become a better blocker, because that's one of the things that the Lions love most about Brock is that he's viable in the passing game, but he's a really good blocking tight end. So James is going to have to improve his blocking before he ever gets, be able to completely overtake uh Brock Wright in that situation. Um Bishaw 0918 saying, I now see what our draft picks look like this season, but are there any draft prospects next year you have an eye on? I have not started looking ahead yet, right? I want trust me, depending on how the Lions season goes, right? And this is something that you guys will kind of learn about me, again, channel only started in May. The amount of looking ahead that I do to like the next draft class is heavily dependent on how well the Lions season is going. If the Lions are winning games, I ain't gonna lie to you guys. You guys probably won't hear me talk about the draft until the season is close to over. If the Lions suck and they're not winning games and they're in contention for a top 5 pick, yeah, we'll probably be talking draft in like December, November type of stuff, because that's like you're almost forced into that as a fan. It's like, well, I guess I got to start looking ahead and trying to figure out what this team needs. Um, but it really just, I mean, defensive tackle is going to be, I think, a position that a lot of people are going to look at. And the thing that's weird about that is that it's not weird, but I guess the only downside of that is that you're probably not going to know like what the good defensive tackles are in college football until it gets closer to the end of the season, and you start to kind of see those types of matchups, and you're able to see who's been consistent at defensive tackle throughout the year. I don't think this upcoming draft is going to have a Jalen Carter type of player. But again, that's the crazy thing about the draft. You just never know. Some guys kind of just come out of nowhere down the stretch. Matthew saying, I'm high on Mitchell. Hope he takes the next step, but it's a performance league. Step up where people will move by you. Just wait. Just what it is and should be. And like I said, I think James Mitchell has a very interesting skill set. I think he could be a really good complement to Sam Laporta. Again, if they decide to roll both of those guys out, I think, we saw him get used a lot of times where defenses are focused on so many other guys in the offense, right? When you have an Amon-Ra St. Brown, when you have a Josh Reynolds, if whether it's Khalif or JMO, Gibbs, like Monty, like there's so many options available on the offense. And I think if a guy like James Mitchell gets rolled out, teams might forget about him. And he's a really athletic tight end. I think people forget because he had that ACL injury. There was talk about how James Mitchell would have went much higher in the draft had he not been injured. So it's something to really kind of look forward to. Um, let's see. Huggy Bear saying, so if Goff continues to play good and becomes great and are winning, are you still looking to replace him with Hooker or no? Looking to replace him? No, not necessarily. I think if they're winning, like I have said this, and I want to like really be clear on this. If the Lions win with Jared Goff and they get into the playoffs, they win the division and just make it to the playoffs and win a playoff game, Jared Goff is going to be in a position to ask for whatever he wants, and the Lions are going to have to make a decision, right? And if Jared Goff asks for the farm, like the Lions are gonna have to make a tough decision. Is that the route they want to go? Do they want to dictate so much of their cap to one single player, or would they want to go in the direction of a Hendon Hooker who has a great amount of potential? But I don't think if Jared Goff is winning, you don't have to replace him. I'm not going to be screaming for them to replace him. But I've also said with Hendon Hooker, I just want him to have an opportunity to challenge for the job. So if Hendon's able to perform, uh, shout out to my guy Mike Payton, who I had as a guest um, a couple weeks ago, and he came out with an article today with a couple bold predictions for training camp. And one of his bold predictions is that Hendon will be able to participate. Now, I don't think that's very likely, but let's say he does. I don't think Hendon will challenge this year for a starting spot, but I think if Hendon is able to pick up the game and if he's the more talented quarterback, I would love the Lions to stick with what they've been saying with every other player where it's like, hey, everything is earned. So if Hendon earns it, um, I would be perfectly fine with him getting the spot, but I don't think you have to, right? It's not a thing where you have to replace him, especially if he's winning. If he's winning. Um, let's see what else I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm enjoying answering your guys' questions. So like let's kind of keep this going for a while. I got nothing else to do. So let's hang out for a bit. Super Saiyan Lion saying Goff is easily a top 15 quarterback. And that's what I've said. Like, and I think what's Huggy Bear pointed this out to me once in the comment section. I'm gonna give you a lot of credit for this because it was a reality check to me. I can easily point out the flaws that I see in Jared Goff's game, but at the core of what I tend to mean to say is that he's just not top 5, but he is top 15 easily. It's not a debate. I don't think that's disrespectful in saying that he's not, a top, 10, top 5 type quarterback. And I understand, like Huggy Bear saying in the comment section, I understand that his metrics last year put him in the top 7 of quarterbacks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what his like actual talent produces, in my opinion, right? I think a lot of it is scheme and putting the right pieces around him. And I think there's other quarterbacks in this league that if you put those same pieces around him would probably perform a little better than Jared Goff. Again, that's not a knock on him. That's just different players provide different skill sets. That's essentially what I'm saying. But he is without a doubt top 15 easily, and it's not 15 or 14 for me. It's not. He's a top 12 to 13 quarterback for me. So I don't know if that makes it easier. I don't know if that makes it worse. I don't know if that's going to get me yelled at, but that's kind of just how I fit. That's kind of how I look at him and how I evaluate him. Let's see. Jordy saying what Goff does well is invisible. He makes pre-snap adjustments, reads the field well, throws accurately and on time. And that is probably his greatest asset, right? If you're the type of offensive coordinator or head coach that has a system in place, and you're like, hey, if you do this on time, if everything plays out this way, if you're able to read this coverage and understand where the ball needs to go, Jared Goff works perfectly for your offense because he's going to do exactly what the offense dictates. He's going to make the necessary adjustments that are needed so that the offense will thrive. But once the ball is hiked, he's going to make his however many steps he needs to make in his drop. He's going to read and know exactly where the ball needs to go. The thing that I like more so in my quarterbacks is that understanding that sometimes in the NFL things don't go according to plan, and sometimes you're going to go up against a defense that has schemed you up better than your offense is able to counter. It's nice to be able to have a quarterback that can freelance, that can adjust on the fly. And I just think it's a limitation to his game. And again, doesn't mean he's terrible. It just means like that's something that Jared Goff doesn't do as well as some other quarterbacks in the NFL. The flashy quarterbacks are running around like headless chickens because they didn't make the throw they were supposed to make earlier in their progression. I mean, I guess it depends on which ones you're talking about, right? Like, again, does Jalen Hurts fit in that category? Because that style of play still got them to the Super Bowl. If you're talking about Lamar Jackson style of play still got him an MVP. Like, there are detractors and there are good examples and bad examples. There are good plays and bad plays on both styles, right? The same way you can sit there and say that, like, hey, a flashy quarterback running around looks like a chicken with his head cut off. I can also say a quarterback that is expecting things to play out a certain way and then doesn't know what to do when it doesn't and just stands in the pocket like a statue. Like, there's pros and cons to both styles. It really just becomes a matter of players being able to execute and do what they're best at. And like you said, Jared Goff's best ability is to make accurate throws and to play in rhythm. And when he's in rhythm, and like when the stat came out last week, right, about how Jared Goff was one of the most blitz quarterbacks, but yet he still threw some, like, I think the fewest, or at least he threw less than 10 interceptions in the NFL. He didn't seem to be rattled a whole lot, and a lot of that's attributed to him being able to work in rhythm and have solid protection around him and have an offensive coordinator that has schemed him up in a way where he can thrive in that style of play. Um, so yeah. C. Perry asking the question: if our running backs do not perform as expected, do we blame them or our O line? Do we panic and sign a free agent? If our running backs don't perform the way they're expected to, it's the running backs, in my opinion, right? If we're talking about the O line being healthy, if the O line is healthy, and these guys just aren't producing, I think there's been the running backs just aren't performing, and I think that'll be tangible and it'll be visible on the field, right? Like, we talk about how David Montgomery was able to be this productive back despite having, not having the best offensive line in Chicago all the time. If he's going behind, again, an offensive line that is considered by most to be one of the top 5 best offensive lines in football, and he's not able to be productive, I'm pretty sure there's going to be something that we'll be able to see on film to be like, hey, this is why David Montgomery's not being productive. The same way we could with DeAndre Swift, right? As great as this offensive line was, there were so many people that would be quick to point out, like, hey, Swift's not hitting this hole, or he's not trusting his blockers, or he's bouncing things outside when he should be cutting inside. Like, it'll be tangible. And the same thing will be true for Jahmyr Gibbs. If Jahmyr's not performing well, we'll see it. And it'll probably be something along those lines where he's not trusting his blocks or he's not reading blocks well. I just don't think it'll happen, just because I think Jahmyr has amazing vision. I really, really do. And David Montgomery is a professional that I think has, like I said, found success behind that Bears offensive line. So there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to find success behind this offensive line. Brian asking, hey, Miko, now that CJ Moore was released, who do you think our special teams ace will be this year? Jalen Reeves-Maybin. I think it's one of the reasons why they brought him back in the first place. Reeves-Maybin is probably as close. If we're talking about like guys at the bottom of the roster, that's like a lock for me. It's Reeves-Maybin. I think it's strictly based off of special teams versatility. Another person that I think is going to make this team that has the potential to develop into a special teams type of ace, if he has to adopt the mindset, is Iffy. He has so much athleticism. He has so many great physical traits as a football player, where it's one of those things where I just feel like if they can get Iffy to buy in and understand that he could be a key cog on special teams, and he'll still get his opportunities on defense here and there, because CJ Moore got his opportunity on defense here and there as well, despite also being one of their better special teams players. I think Iffy would actually really thrive in that role. But currently, like, who's on the roster right now, it's Jalen Reeves-Maybin for me. B-Shaw asking the question, is it a wow. Is it a winning formula to keep our O-line one of the highest paid groups in the NFL for the next 5 years? I think so. I think because, and I guess it really depends. Well, put it this way. Let me back up. It depends on the style of football you're looking to play. If you're looking to play this style of football where it's, run the football and then have this play action style of passing attack, and that's how you want to attack teams, then yeah, that's more beneficial to you, because at that point in time, it almost like, if you remember back when the Cowboys had this great offensive line, it didn't matter who their running back was, because their offensive line was so dominant they could make anybody look good. So you get that flexibility, and you already have invested in a young quarterback in Hendon Hooker. So if you've invested so much money to your O-line and you're just like, well, we're not going to pay a quarterback, north of $50 million, you don't have to. You can trust the fact that you have an offensive line that's young enough and experienced enough to protect anybody that's back there throwing the football. And you just have to find talented quarterbacks, which I think they did in Hendon Hooker, and develop that. And again, then you cross that bridge later down, further down the line, as far as how much you need to play that person. But because it's a second contract, and unless Hendon Hooker wins you a Super Bowl, you probably aren't going to be paying him the same type of money that some of these other quarterbacks are going to be playing, um, when his contract is up. Huggy Bear saying, I need to see Hurst and other mobile quarterbacks play on less talented teams to say they're as good as people think. I mean, I think that's fair. I think Lamar has proven that. I think the fact that Lamar Jackson has been able to have the success that he's had, and let me just finish that thought. The fact that Lamar Jackson has had the success that he's had in the NFL, despite never really having a true wide receiver one until this season, and even then, it's like an Odell Beckham Jr. that's coming off of 2 torn ACLs, and I think is still like in his 30s, isn't even like the it's better than what he's had. But the fact that Lamar has still been successful in the NFL, been has gone to the playoffs, has had winning seasons and things of that nature, is isn't a knock on him. Like if there's any type of knock, like, well, they haven't won multiple playoff games or they haven't been to a Super Bowl, it's not because Lamar Jackson doesn't have the talent. It's because they never gave him wide receivers to throw to, in my opinion. Matthew saying, agree with the running quarterbacks getting hurt. Matter of time. Better Patrick's out for a while over the next couple of years. Stuff happens. Yeah. Perry Ball saying, Miko, do the Lions re-sign Jonah Jackson or do they pass because he wants too much money? You should re-sign. We talked about this a couple streams ago. I think it was probably about a month ago. I would re-sign Jonah today. I think Jonah is probably the most underrated offensive player that is on this team, in my opinion. And it's because, like, in my opinion, it's because Jonah's so good at his job. Jonah is so good at his job that he's almost invisible, that like we don't take out time to realize like how well he is at playing guard. And I get it. He's not getting Pro Bowl nods. And I think if he was getting Pro Bowl nods, like he would be more expensive. And I think there would be more of a case to be made that maybe they don't pay him. But Jonah's good at what he does. And I think he's worth a contract extension. So I would extend him today if it were up to me. Super Saiyan Lion saying, tell that to the golf haters, Miko, there's a lot of them. And I get lumped in with them, and it's like, I don't hate him. I think he's very good. He's maybe not my cup of tea of quarterback. He's maybe not the quarterback that I would pick if I were given free range to pick whatever quarterback I wanted, but he's good enough to win with. And it doesn't have to be sexy. It's something that I'm learning. And a lot of these, like Super Saiyan Lion, to that point, a lot of these Jared Goff haters are going to have to learn that if the Lions win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff, no one's going to be talking about how he did it. It's just the simple fact that he won one. You think the Ravens care how they won their Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer? No, they won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer, and he got a Super Bowl ring regardless. They needed somebody playing quarterback for them to get there, and so it's not a big deal, right? As far as like how it looks, it's at the end of the day, it really just matters. Again, whether your team is winning or not. Let's see. Let's get a few more of these in, and then I'm probably going to bounce. Getting kind of hungry. And so, yeah. Huggy Bear saying, haven't heard much about Rodrigo since we drafted Campbell. How do you think he helps the Lions? I think he's a depth piece. I think he's another guy that I think Malcolm has a role, and he has a skill set that the Lions can use. I think he'll definitely be featured on special teams quite a bit. But as far as being a starter, like, yeah, I kind of think those days are kind of over. Whether it's because Derek Barnes is drastically improved or Jack Campbell just isn't going. Is Jack Campbell's going to man down the Mike spot and Alex Anzalone's going to, lock down the Will spot. But I do think there may be situations where whether it's a rundown situation or, again, like Malcolm is someone that you at least feel comfortable that if one of your top linebackers goes down, you at least know Malcolm can go in there and start a couple games and hold down the fort. but it's something that I think as the season went on last year, we started to kind of quickly see, you know what, as good as Malcolm can be in spurts, he's not a long-term solution at that linebacker spot. And kind of like in a way, like looking back at what Brad Holmes said about like, hey, the linebacker spot wasn't something that we circled as a need. I'm gonna call a little bit of cap on that. I think they had to have seen that, like again, Malcolm is good in certain situations, but that size limitation does come into play. He can't hip toss everybody. Like that part of his game, and that those physical limitations are going to show up in certain situations. And even if it wasn't in the run game, I think like where Malcolm's biggest weaknesses showed up was actually in the passing game, right? Because he doesn't have the height to really disrupt quarterbacks' throwing windows. And he's a good athlete, but he's not like this ridiculous athlete to where he can just keep up and challenge tight ends all the time. So he'll have a role. He'll definitely be playing on special teams, but yeah, those days of him starting are kind of dead in my opinion. Um, let's see how many more of these. Let's see what else we got in here. Brian saying, how many yards do you think Monty will have this year behind our O line? I think he can get 1,000. I honestly think that like if Jamal can get 1,000, David Montgomery should be able to get 1,000. Like getting 1,000 yards should be easy for David Montgomery, in my opinion. He's gotten 1,000-yard seasons before, so I think that should be the floor for David Montgomery is 1,000 yards. The touchdown number is going to be interesting to see because I think obviously like it's really going to depend on how the Lions choose to operate within the red zone, and because they have so many weapons available to them, rushing touchdowns could be really high or they could be really low depending on again just how they decide to attack teams once they get into the red zone. Um, Perry Ball asking again in relation to Jonah, what kind of deal do you think he is worth? I believe don't I'm yeah, don't quote me on this, but I think I remember saying that I would pay him like at least like 11 to 13 mil. Seemed fair for Jonah. Um, again, I would much rather have an offensive line that you can count on for years to come than trying to find somebody that can replace Jonah, right? Because remembering the fact that like Jonah was a mid, like I think he was like what a third round pick, and so the fact that you've gotten that caliber of player out of a third round pick, I don't like the idea of thinking that like, oh well, we can just go find that again. I know the Lions are probably, I know some people, I don't know how the Lions necessarily feel, but I know like there are some fans that are really high on Colby Sorsdal. But from everything that I've heard, Colby Sorsdal is necessarily like is preparing to play next to Panay on the right side. He's not necessarily playing like preparing to play left guard. So I don't think that's somebody that you can necessarily count on going forward in that situation. Bishaw asking, what will be the Lions' biggest key to beating Kansas City? Getting getting enough stops. Like defensively, I expect this to be a shootout because Kansas City, again, you're going up against the arguably the greatest quarterback in the NFL, the greatest tight end in the NFL, and probably the greatest offensive mind in the NFL with Andy Reid. So what you need to do is that you do need to be able to get a few stops. You're going to have to be able to, whether that's in the form of turnovers or whether that's in the form of just forcing the Chiefs to punt. If you allow this to just be a track meet, if this turns into the Seattle game where it's literally your guys are going back and forth tit for tat type of things, the Lions are going to lose that matchup, in my opinion, just because there's going to be a situation where they're not going to get in the end zone. And I think if the defense is getting ran through like that, like Kansas City is just going to be clicking on all cylinders. So the key to beating Kansas City is getting a few stops here and there, right? You have to be able to do that. And if you can, then this becomes a game, in my opinion. Perry once again asking, Miko, are you concerned about the Ragnow toe injury? No, I'm not. Mainly because they navigated it so well last year. If this was a new injury and they and they were trying to figure out what to do with Frank during the season, then yeah, I'd be a little more concerned. But seeing as Frank, they had a formula and that formula seemed to work. I think Frank only missed like one game last season, so I'm not hitting the panic button on that one. Um, Brent asking the question, has anyone heard anything about Iffy? If we keep him, do we have room for him? I think you do. I think you have room for him. It's going to require, I think when it's all said and done, the Lions are going to have to make a really tough decision between Iffy and Julian Okwara. And I think actually, currently, I think Iffy has a better chance of making this roster than Julian. I think there's a way that Julian could make the roster, but it's going to require them to make cuts in other areas to be able to fit Julian and Iffy. But I think Iffy's going to make it. I think he's going to probably bounce back and forth between active and inactive. Wow, that is, try saying that 5 times fast. But he's going to bounce back and forth between that. But I think if he is somebody that could have a role on special teams, like I was saying earlier, it's just, again, it becomes about buy-in because he's already had to change positions once, right? Going from corner to safety. And now you're going to have to get him to buy into being a special teams focused player. And if he can do that, and if he can buy into that and just is happy with being in the NFL and having a role, I think Iffy will be solid for the team going forward. Huggy Bear saying, so if Goff outplayed Mahomes again and wins, what should the narrative be? That Jared Goff beat Patrick Mahomes twice. I think that'll be the narrative. I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to change the narrative about Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, I don't think Patrick Mahomes has won 2 Super Bowls. No one's changing the narrative. And I think until Jared Goff starts doing that type of thing, then it's just like, no, it'll be like, hey, Jared Goff has, the narrative will be that Jared Goff probably has Patrick Mahomes' number, which is a horrible narrative to have because Jared Goff isn't going up against Patrick Mahomes. He's going up against the Chiefs defense. So it's I don't know. I don't personally believe that should be the narrative, but I think that'll be the narrative that gets spun, right? Is that Jared Goff has Patrick Mahomes' number. So yeah. I think the next narrative, probably the most likely narrative that also to come out of that, if we're not talking about those 2 players specifically, is that if Jared Goff helps the Lions beat Patrick Mahomes and he outplays Mahomes, the Lions to the Super Bowl talk is going to be insufferable. And I mean that like obviously like Lions fans, we're going to love it, but like it's going to be high. It's going to be consistent and it's going to probably annoy some people, not fans, but like not Lions fans, but it'll probably annoy other fan bases because everyone will be saying that it's one game. All right, I'm going to answer 2 more questions and I'm going to get up out of here. Perry, you get this one. Miko, your surprise player this year, breakout year. Josh Pascal. I've been saying it. I'm going to keep saying it. Josh Pascal is the guy that is my, like, not getting talked about enough, but he's going to have a breakout year and he's going to surprise a lot of people. So Josh Pascal. And then what's the early record prediction for the Lions? I've been saying this fairly consistently. I got them at 11-6. I think the ceiling is 13-4, but 11-6 is what I think is attainable. Again, I think if we want to talk, ceiling being 13-4, the floor being what they finished last year, right? 9-8. I think that is, and that's again not with like no serious injuries to like Jared Goff or something like that, and Nate Sudfeld starting most of the season. Like if the team is healthy and they're maybe the defense doesn't take that step forward, I still think you're able to get 9 wins. Hopefully it's at least like winning early in the season and then they're just dropping games here and there. But currently my current prediction, looking at their matchups, looking at and what I think the roster will be, I got the Lions at 11-6. So that's my current prediction. Josh was saying 12-5. Like I said, like optimism should be high. Luke has been beating this drum for a while, and I agree with it. I think as fans, we need to have high expectations. I think we're beyond the point of just like, hey, 9, 10, like, no, like this team is capable of taking the jump. They have a really good offensive coordinator. They have amazing offensive weapons. They have a head coach that I truly believe in. But I mean, again, they got to go out there and they got to prove it. Matthew saying, "Dang, Mika, you're smoking them tonight." Hey, man, I got high expectations, and I don't want to like lower those expectations. out of fear that this team won't accomplish the things that I think that they're absolutely capable of doing. So with that said, appreciate you guys coming through. You guys had some amazing questions. I had other topics that I wanted to like hit today, but you guys had so many good questions that I basically just like felt like scrapping them all and just really just chopping it up with you guys. So like I said earlier, thank you guys so much for the 500 subscribers. Uh, Literally, this has been so fun to be able to do, and you guys have given me so much more confidence to be able to do this, and to feel like I really have a place in this, Lions content creator community. So um, if you guys keep showing the support, I'm going to keep creating the content. I'm going to keep being myself, keep being, as authentic as I can. But let's keep building this, right? 500 is awesome. Let's get to 1,000. And from there, let's keep building and building and building. If you guys ever have like any type of video suggestions that you guys would want to see, feel free to leave those in the comment section. I read your guys' comments all the time, right? I may not get to reply to everybody, but I definitely try to. So yeah, thank you guys. So many other big things are soon to come for this channel. And for me personally, and like I said, I can't wait to share them with you. And when I can, like I said, you guys will be the first ones to know. But I appreciate you guys so much. Hope you all have an amazing night. And I will catch you guys in the next stream. Later.